To learn about this year's cohort, please visit iwp.uiowa.edu, where you can find biographies and writing samples from our writers, as well as a schedule of our upcoming events. There's also pizza in the back, generously provided by International Programs. And now for today's panel. Literature in the Age of Streaming. The age of streaming is creating a growing market for screen adaptations of canonical and recent texts. Are authors now writing for the visual future? These essays explore how the influx of screen adaptations is redefining the literary landscape. Our format for every panel is the same. I'll introduce the writers going down the list. They'll each give a brief presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. Lindsay will be wandering around with the microphone. Please don't begin answering your question until she reaches you with that microphone, because we want to be sure that the audience watching on YouTube can hear you. Immediately to my left is Hayakan Michaela Kwan, a playwright, screenwriter, theater, and film director from South Korea, from which I actually flew home yesterday. So the food is better in Seoul, I have to say, than in Iowa City. She's written and directed a competition-winning multimedia musical and several short films in multiple languages. She won the 2023 BBC International Playwriting Competition, and her winning play, Steady Eyes, was produced by BBC Studios Audio and broadcast on the BBC World Service in 2024. She was the scriptwriter, director representing Korea for the ASEAN ROK Independent Cinema Project. She recently completed a stage play exploring Korea's social rigidity and is currently developing a new play on the realities of a super-aging society and a novel centered on self-acceptance. Her participation is made possible by a grant from the Arts Council of Korea, also known as ARCO. To her left is S.A. Liu, screenwriter, fiction writer, and nonfiction writer from Taiwan. She was born in 1980. She is from Changhua, Taiwan, and she has won the Golden Horse Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, the Taipei Film Festival's Best Screenplay, the United Literature Novel Newcomer Award, the Lin Rogsan Literature Award for Essays, etc. Her works include 7 Days in Heaven, Dear Child, Wish You Were Here Too, and more than 10 others. She teaches script writing courses in universities and workshops, and her participation in the fall residency is made possible by a grant from Taiwan's Ministry of Culture. Please join me in welcoming Michaela.
Thank you. My voice is a bit wonky today, but okay. Full disclosure, my goal as a writer is to get all my written works adapted into films or TV series. Not only because that's where the money is, but because it is where my artistic roots are. In recent years, Korean filmmakers have been flocking to streaming platforms, leaving behind the traditional production domain, as both box offices and broadcasters have been losing ground to the on-demand services. Accordingly, my plan also involves working with streaming content providers, since jumping on the bandwagon seems unavoidable. I am currently working on my first novel with the aim of having it adapted into a film series. I dislike categorizing my works into one conventional genre, as they often defy or blend different ones, but if I have to, it'll most likely be a romantic comedy, which is perfect. It is one of the genres that enjoys a great number of film and TV adaptations due to its relative ease of production, budget friendliness, and public appeal. My novel fits into the genre of rom-com in that it features a plain woman in her own eyes and in the eyes of anyone whose definition of beauty has been dictated by the increasingly unrealistic global beauty standards, and of course, an array of attractive men who she somehow manages to become romantically involved with. On the other hand, the novel deviates from this popular genre as it delves deeply into the protagonist's self-image, as well as her psychology and the social climate that shaped it, discusses sexuality not to titillate readers, but to examine it through a female perspective in the historical, social, and cultural contexts, and questions what is often normalized in the rom-com genre, such as the great lengths women go to in order to look more attractive to men. The book was conceived as a reflection on how my own self-perception has been informed by the media representation I have been exposed to since a young age, especially under the dominant white male gaze. Essentially, it could well be a social science book disguised as a chick lit novel. As I write the book, I find myself weighing in my mind the pros and cons of each of my artistic decisions, each paragraph, sentence, and word. Is this too heavy, too serious, too feminist, too didactic? I am censoring myself so the outcome is more appetizing to potential producers and audiences, whilst debating whether to increase the level of eroticism with the very same intention. That is, in a sense, I am reverse censoring myself at the same time. In South Korea, it is usually web novels and comics that are picked up by film and TV producers, whereas literary works receive much less of their attention. As you can imagine, web-based content, which has a low entry barrier and is mainly, if not solely, for entertainment, often panders to people's baser instincts. This, in turn, results in the prolific production of lowbrow media content, such as TV series categorized as makjang dramas, the Korean equivalent of soap opera on steroids. I hear about Korean writers who made it big by writing web novels that led them to sign lucrative film or TV adaptation deals. Even some of the writing competitions hosted by government organizations tend to favor stories suited for web-based content production rather than literary publication or stage production, since the former has proven to have a much higher chance of becoming an IP cash cow. When it comes to the world of Korean literature, however, the picture is quite different. If you win one of the most prestigious literature awards for your short story, the first thing the previous winners say to you is, "Do you have a full-time job? Good. Do not quit it. If you already did, find a way to go back to it." Not long ago, I heard about a published writer who resorted to writing web novels to support herself financially. In a climate where pursuing literary writing equates to being a struggling artist, and potential opportunities for financial freedom, and thus the freedom to continue being a writer, are concentrated in more commercialized, less sophisticated formats, who could blame her? Of course, if you are talented, hardworking, and fortunate, you could be one of the writers who catches two birds with one stone by writing something meaningful to you, getting it adapted into an audiovisual form, and enjoying a joint success. However, as one of my fellow IWP participants said from her own experience, the mindset of film and TV producers is quite different from that of writers, the former being focused mainly on profitability. This mindset of theirs will sometimes ruin valuable works in the process of adaptation, and other times it'll render mediocre works into something that looks more than what it really is by adding an artsy feel to it. I presume that in this mindset, the how does not matter as long as they can rake it in. Retaining or further nurturing the artistic value of a literary work likely ranks below viewing and subscription rates in their list of priorities. A few years ago, Squid Game topped the Netflix ranking around the world, becoming a global sensation. Behind its violence, gore, and absurdity were explicit commentaries on Korea's harsh realities, devoid of safety nets for have-nots and social minorities, as well as foreign influences on its economy and people's livelihoods. Its follow-up season, however, seemed to have lost its original vigor in holding up a mirror to the ugly face of Korea's capitalism. By employing the same tropes as its first season to meet audience expectations only in terms of spectacle, it ended up feeling as if its violence existed for the sake of violence rather than to convey socio-political messages. It gives me grim chills to think that, even after becoming one of the most successful shows on the most beloved streaming platform that supposedly gives filmmakers more creative leeway than its competitors, a show's artistic vision can still be compromised by the pressure of financial motivation. I feel that to be a writer is like walking on a tightrope with a pole in your hands. On one side of the pole is why you became a writer, all the things you want to shout to the world. On the other is the inevitable and relentless demands of commercialism that will always weigh you down, whilst you strive hard to strike the right balance so as not to fall off, because if you do, you might not be able to climb back onto that narrow line of precarity. Currently, Korea's creative industry is experiencing a short-form content craze. Media producers are busy promoting their new 2-minute drama productions, which seem to be sprouting exponentially. Could screenwriters still produce anything worthwhile when media content is essentially reduced to TikTok videos? What does this mean for audiovisual adaptations of cultural texts? Would there be any room left for literature and its screen adaptations when people's attention spans cannot exceed a few minutes? Uncertainty regarding a writer's livelihood seems to be reaching a whole new level, what with the advent of new technologies and ever-changing trends. But at least I know one thing for sure, that I will keep on writing despite all the challenges. In fact, the more there are ontological and methodological threats for writers, the more I become determined to write from the innermost place of my heart in the most daring way, because I believe that genuineness and subversion can beat everything when it comes to writing. Besides, as a soon-to-be IWP alum, I am now obligated to produce only the works that IWP can proudly present. So there is no stooping for me as a writer. So although my quest for catching two birds with one stone continues, I am going to stop censoring myself because I will always choose to catch the humble bird that sings my songs before I try to catch the big, fat, flamboyant one that pays the bills.
Is streaming a great opportunity for writers? Coincidentally, today, September 19, a new movie was released in Taiwan called Blind Love. It's based on my short story debut, written 22 years ago. I consider this short story to be the starting point of my writing journey. This coincidence makes me think that the short story has already surpassed its film adaptation by 22 years, and the author, me, has already come even further here. Therefore, in the age of streaming, I never worry about literature being overtaken by film, because literature always leads the way. Every film and television series begins with the writer typing the first word on a blank screen. Whether it's a literary adaptation with a long history or various media recreation of the streaming age, for most writers, the simple hope is that their works will be seen by more people and have a greater impact. With the rise of the streaming age and the surge in demand for content, writers' chances of being adapted may seem higher, but this is not the case. When Makila asks me why adaptations are so difficult, I say it's because of the different mindsets of the two industries. Is it that the film and television industry is solely focused on profit, or are writers all too noble and virtuous? I think, objectively speaking, it's the different characteristic of the media. When a writer writes, the moonlight is hazy. The lighting crew has to kind unity pose. When a writer writes, the station platform is bustling with people. The production team worries about which station to rent and how many lunchboxes the background actor have to eat. For the writer, the story is already there. Can't you just take it and film it? Is it just a matter of transforming the text into video? But the producers and investors say, I don't see where the attraction is, or where are the villains, conflicts, and climaxes. Therefore, every adaptation is a long and arduous journey. The success stories we see are like fireworks. What we don't see is the long, dark line. Fortunately, I once set off a firework. That was my first film, 7 Days in Heaven, adapted from my own essay, and it was also my ticket to the film industry. Movies do what words can't. The unique nature of literary works lies in their ability to express subtle imagery, delicate psychological portraits, and layer upon layer of metaphors around the core. However, to quickly and effectively capture audience attention and create buzz, film and television productions often relied on high-concept titles, meaning they can capture a story in a single sentence. The most admired example is the Hollywood film Snake on a Plane. The 4-word title instantly establishes the setting, the enemy, the crisis, the conflict, and the dramatic moment. Upon seeing the title, the audience is primed to be frightened, entertained, and fully satisfied. For 7 Days in Heaven, the film company initially considered whether it needed a more shocking and appealing title, like 7 Nights of Ghost Stories. However, I'm grateful that the film company, out of respect for literature, retaining the same title as the original. The setting is a funeral, with no clear enemy or dramatic crisis or conflict. A one-sentence introduction, what a daughter observes and reflects at her father's funeral, since that it cannot attract the audience interest or bring highlights to the box office. What is surprising is that when the quiet words were transformed into a film, they resonated with Taiwanese audience childhood memories. The actors' vivid local language and performance portrayed humorous, authentic, and ordinary characters. The film represented countryside scenes like night markets, temples, and old streets, capturing down-to-earth details of everyday life. These evoke childhood memories, transcending any sensational commercial elements. The universal theme of parental loss also moved audiences overseas. The film was a box office success, and it also made the original essay collection a bestseller. At the time, I truly believe that film can help spread literature. Words must be sacrificed. However, when adapting a literary work, it must first pass through the script stage. In the text of the translator, Walter Benjamin likened the translated text to the afterlife of the original. If adaptation is broadly defined as translation, the film and television works as the afterlife of literature. Then, screenwriters are like dissecting causal relationships of past lives, setting up destiny and charting a new path for the next life, imbuing it with a new life. The medium of words is then demoted to a mere tool that assists script writing. The author's literary style and rich connotation within the original work are completely dismembered. When literature is reincarnated as a script, it becomes a filming instruction, a basic direct narrative, and a description of action. After the long, arduous, and time-consuming, costly, laborious filming and editing process, it is transformed into a brand new work. When the original literary work is dead, how do we view the film adaptation? I think the best way is to treat it as a brand new life. Literature is not dead, but has gained an afterlife. Next, I'd like to demonstrate a clip from the original essay to the screenplay and finally to the film. It is from 7 Days in Heaven, and I will read original essay first. That was one of your favorite jokes, wasn't it? When you hear an ambulance siren, you have to distinguish between the two. If it's wuyi, wuyi, which means cure, cure in Taiwanese, you should quickly give way. If it's bo yi, which means no cure, no cure, then don't give way. When our relatives burst into laughter, I am often the only one who dares to challenge you. If there's no cure, why take an ambulance? The body needs to be taken home, you say. So we will get in the ambulance with you and go home. After we got in, the ambulance driver's flat voice asked, Miss, do you worship Buddha or Jesus? I was confused, so the driver was more direct. Do you burn incense at home? I nodded stiffly. The driver suddenly flipped a cassette tape over and pushed it into the speaker. Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha. What's on the other side? Is it Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah? I knew the most ridiculous journey of my life had just started. Bo yi, bo yi. Okay, we are going to read the screenplay, and I invited Roy to play the driver and the father, and Karen to play the daughter, May.
I just want to say that Roy is a professional actor, and I'm the last one to pick ever for acting, so.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Cut 2, outside hospital. The colonel is transferred into an ambulance. Then the male nurse, brother, and May get in. The driver turns his head around.
Miss, does your family worship Buddha or believe in Jesus?
What?
Do you light incense at home?
Yes.
The driver inserts a cassette tape into the player, and Hallelujah jumps out from poor quality speaker. Music, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah.
Oh, sorry.
The driver ejects the cassette, flips side, and inserts the tape again. Chanting of the name of Namo Amitabha begins. The driver turns on the siren and finally hits the roll.
I knew the most ridiculous journey of my life had just started.
Cut 2, office. May stands stunned in her OA office system cubicle as she answers her cell phone. Her world seems to suddenly slant upside down. Cut 2, restaurant. Flashback to a home video with a family gathering. The little cousin holds a camcorder. Everyone is singing happy birthday. Father is blowing out the candles on the cake. Everyone.
Yeah, everyone. Nice. Cheer up. Hi, guys. Let me tell you a joke about cure, no cure.
What's that?
Listen. Did you know there are two kinds of ambulance sirens? One siren sounds like wee,
Oui, oui.
wee,
Oui, oui.
wee, wee. One siren sounds like wee, 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 wee. When you hear this, you need to pull over and allow the ambulance to go by because the patient is still curable. If you hear the other kind of siren, boy, 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 then you can ignore it.
Father imitates ambulance sirens. Everyone laughs. May taps the cup with chopsticks to get everyone's attention.
If there is no cure, what's the need for an ambulance?
No cure means the ambulance is returning a body home. No cure.
Everyone laughs again. Okay, thank you, Roy and Karen.
Thank you.
And happy birthday to Thomas. Okay, let's watch the clip.
小姐，恁倒是拜不做还信耶稣的？
啊？
就是恁兜有香拜拜无？
有。
好势。
我知道，我这一生最荒谬的一趟旅程已经启动。
我讲一个有意无意的笑话，互恁听吼。
有意无意是什么？
听下咧吼，恁知影迄个救护车吼，有两款声咧。啊，你若准听到，你得分辨一下。
是哦。
有一款咧，叫做有意有意有意，啊，你得紧张咯。有意有意，啊，迄个有意嘛，对无？你若准听到迄。无意无意无意，啊，恁就免吵伊啊啦，吼。啊，笑别笑。
等一下，若是无意，干嘛还要坐救护车？
啊，你了听无？
有啊。
啊，就无意，啊，就送去厝里啊。
哎呀。好啦。
Literature provides a good foundation for film, and film breathes new life into the original literary work. They are both independent works, and they also nourish each other. How to preserve the essence of literature while satisfying the sensory experience of film is a film writer's task. As a film writer, I will continue to work hard. As a writer, I will remain positive, continuing to create while looking forward to various cross-media collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you. Two dazzling presentations. Before we begin the questioning, I want to tell you about some upcoming events. On Sunday at 4 o'clock, we will have our Prairie Lights reading featuring our birthday boy, Thomas Downey from Argentina, Tai Tibble from New Zealand, and translation MFA candidate Fiancé. Please join us on Monday, September 22nd at 5:30 p.m. at Shamba House for a presentation by 2024 IWP alum Pervin Saket from India, alongside visual artist Diane Vedino, moderated by translation MFA candidate Devanshi Kirtapal. The three of them will come together for a spirited conversation around women's narratives across hybrid forms. And on Thursday, September 25th, the IWP will present a screening of a documentary titled Kherson Human Safari in EPB Room 107. This film is the story of Ukraine's most dangerous city, as told by its people in collaboration with filmmakers Charlie Morris and Zarina Zabrinsky. And with that, I will open it up to questions. Again, please wait till Lindsay gets to you with the microphone.
Question for each of you. How do you begin writing?
That's a very good question, but pretty difficult one to answer. I think I usually start with a theme rather than specific ideas. And usually what really starts me off is like what's like brewing inside me emotionally. For example, when I wrote Steady Eyes as a radio play that won the BBC International Playwriting Competition, I was having a difficult time with my mom, and that really, that motivated me to write about 3 generations of women and how difficult their relationships are against the backdrop of a surreal global mass abductions by extraterrestrial beings. Because I love like blending different genres and stuff. So I guess, you know, when there's something that needs to be resolved psychologically and emotionally inside me, I work with that. I think that's, Thank
you. I'm sorry, I need a film to support me to translation. 如果是从小开始写作的话，我觉得是从喜欢阅读开始。
So if it's about starting to write from a young age, it comes from a love of reading.
但是如果要说是如何开始想要写一个作品的时候，我想是可能对生活或是人生有产生疑问的时候。
If it's about starting to write a new project, it comes from a place of having questions, having a question about life or about the world.
例如说，刚刚大家看到的这个 7 Days in Heaven 是我在我父亲的葬礼上面，那就开始去想，为什么葬礼是这个样子？那这个葬礼真的可以帮助死者往生的人到达一个更好的地方吗？或是它真的可以帮助我们消除我们的悲伤吗？
For example, the clip that we saw, 7 Days in Heaven, I started thinking about this during my father's funeral. I thought about questions such as, what is the purpose of this ritual? Can this actually help people, the living, continue with their lives and reach a better place?
或者是我在 reading 里面我的那个 writing sample 里面的亲爱的小孩是关于为什么我30岁的时候会很想要生小孩，是因为荷尔蒙在作祟，还是我真的想要生小孩？那也是我产生的疑问，所以我透过写小说去解决它。
For example, in my writing sample, Dear Child, it started from a question of whether in my 30s, I really wanted to have a child, and I was wondering whether this was something due to my hormones or whether I actually really wanted a child. So that's where the writing began.
Could you take it just another step and talk about the difference between writing the so-called literary piece and then translating it into a screenplay? What the difference is in your mindset as you're making that transition?
就好比刚刚让大家看的这个短短的片段，在散文里面是那个想法是在女儿的脑袋里面成型的，就是她想着，难道另外一面是哈利路亚，哈利路亚？但是在电影里面就必须把它演出来，所以必须要透过动作跟声音把它表现出来。还有当女儿想起父亲说的这个无一不一的笑话的时候，其实也是在她脑袋里头而已。但是在电影里面就要把它变成是到一个庆生会的场景上面，变成是一个 flashback， 一个回忆。
So, for example, in the clip that we watched in 7 Days, in the part with the hallelujah, hallelujah was entirely in the daughter's mind. But in a movie, in a film, you have to have action and sound to make that happen. And when she thinks about her father's birthday party as well, that is something that needs to be acted out and performed.
所以我觉得最大的不同就是文学它可以一切都是在想之中的，在感觉里头的，但是要变成剧本的时候，它就必须要去想，那这个故事要发生在哪里，场景在哪里，那演员可以用什么动作来表演。
So I think the biggest difference is that in literature, a lot of things can be expressed through thought and feeling, whereas in a screenplay, you have to think about how are the actors going to do this? What sort of setting is this? How is this going to happen on screen?
所以其实在改编文学作品的时候，最怕看到的就是我感觉、我觉得、我回想起。
So when I'm adapting works for screenplay, the thing I fear most seeing is things like, I thought about, I recalled, I felt.
Do you want to take the question, Michaela?
Oh, I think she already covered it all, but I'll just add that. So I come from a filmmaking background, so I think cinematically, even when I write novels or like short stories.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest difference in my approach to like screenplays and non-screenplays is basically that I try to follow the golden rule of show, don't tell when it's, when I'm like writing screenplays. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you both for your wonderful presentations. Essie mentioned this a little bit, but I'm wondering, because literary writing is quite a solitary experience, right? You do it by yourself. But for film, radio, stage, there must be collaboration. And I was wondering if you two could speak on collaboration, whether you've been surprised by choices your collaborators made, whether you've been excited, whether that loss of control is difficult sometimes.
其实我觉得这个是身为编剧最 suffering 最痛苦的部分。
Actually, I think this is the most painful and difficult part of being a screenplay writer, a screenwriter.
因为的确写小说、写诗都是一个人在笔记本上面、在电脑上面就可以独自完成的。
So it's true that writing novels is something that can happen with your notebook alone or with your laptop.
但是剧本它要有很多人的意见在里面，而编剧是要去融合每个人的意见，让每个人都满意。那在这个过程中，常常自己的意见已经变得不重要了。
But in writing a screenplay, a screenwriter has to work with a large group of people and make sure everyone's happy, everyone's ideas are added into the mix. And so a lot of the time, your own sort of conviction or your own ideas get lost.
那所以我觉得编剧的工作比较像是沟通跟协调，还有很强很强的耐心。
So I think the job of a screenwriter is really more coordination and communication, and you need to have a lot of patience.
So yeah, I am a script writer and director, so I have a lot of experience of having to sort of compromise or just let go. Yeah, but I think that's actually part of the beauty when it comes to, filmmaking or theatre making, because you have to collaborate with other people who might have different ideas from you. And I'm a bit of a control freak, so I tend to try to like control every little detail, but do you know what? That really doesn't help in the end, because people are there to, create this, the baby that I wrote, and they are doing their best. And sometimes, it ends up that, other people's ideas are much better than mine. So I think, yeah, as a director, sometimes you kind of have to really assert and insist your ideas, really push through. But then, yeah, in the end, it's you really have to keep the collaborative spirit in you and just accept that not everything can be done like how you imagined exactly. And yeah, I think it's important that to remember that it's a collaborative process. And it, in the end, I don't know, I just think that the result outcome is always the best that it can be, so, yeah.
Is there a special joy in collaboration that you find? I know there are difficulties, but there must be some moments of exhilaration, right?
我觉得在编剧常常到了第2稿、第3稿或是第10多稿的时候，已经都是在解决问题。
I think for screenwriters, when you get to the 2nd or 3rd draft, not even the 10th draft, it's often about resolving problems.
对，那所以是一群人一起去想出了一个最好的答案的时候，那个时候是真的很让人振奋的。
So when a whole group of people get together and start and come up with solutions to these problems, it really makes you feel like you're part of a team.
那我知道在台湾有一些比较资深的编剧，他们是不准拍摄的时候去更动他任何一个剧本上面的对白或是设定的。
I know in Taiwan there are a couple of more experienced screenwriters, perhaps, who are a little more strict with their work, so they won't allow people to make any edits, any adjustments.
但是我是比较开放的，我反而会很喜欢在现场有一些即兴的表现。
But I'm more open-minded and more flexible. I like to actually have a lot of feedback as we're going through the process.
我觉得其实不只是文学的原著，连剧本它可能都只是作为一个很好的基础。那一个好的剧本，我觉得是可以去让演员跟工作人员想要去拿出他们最好的部分。
It's not just a novel, but also a screenplay that can become a really good foundation for a good work, and that can be the source of inspiration for actors and the production team to really put their best foot forward.
但是的确也会有不如自己预期的时候。
Of course, there are also times when things don't go the way you want them to go.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that same question. What about the times when they don't get it, when things aren't doing good, when they're not getting it right? What do you do then?
是深呼吸，然后接受它。
Take a deep breath and accept it.
Hi, I'm also part of this program. Being mainly a scriptwriter, that's primary thing, I want to say some thoughts I had. First, that I start always as a script, and I can never skip the part of going back to literature. I put the structure, I understand, but to feel the characters, I need to go back, write it as a story, and then come back to the script. So there's always also the way back, not only from there. And the other thing, you tried, Chris, to ask about joy, and you talk a lot about compromise. And I'm a scriptwriter and a director. And a lot of time I think I lose a lot because I rub me with me as not two brains, one brain. I'm the scriptwriter, I'm the director, and I get 1.5% instead of 200, 150. And I think the thing about film, and there's an opportunity there, is the scrubbing with other minds. And there's a potential there for fireworks. Now, there's a lot of compromise, but we live in a world with other people. The easiest thing is to sit in a room and be in our own mind and in our imaginary world. But when we go out to collaboration and we meet other minds of the photographer and the actors this is real life, and we should compromise there, but there's an option for something bigger than the whole, you know? The whole is bigger than the parts. And that's a very, very beautiful part of, I think, filmmaker and television, that you collaborate. And when this works, it makes love to the world, I think. So I wanted to a little bit advocate for screenwriters.
Other questions or comments? Well, then
那我可以反问各位作家们一个问题，就是你希望你的作品被改编成影视或是上 streaming 吗？
I have a question for all the writers in the room. Would you want your works to be adapted for the screen or for streaming services?
What a good question.
I'd love to see one poem being transformed into an epic film, but I'll leave that job to essay. You know, the screenplay of that to essay. But I mean, I do write fiction as well, and I always think it'll be an interesting journey to see what life a fiction narrative can take in cinematic form. But for instance, in about a few weeks' time, the dance department will be bringing out poetry into dance. So I'm always interested in that deliciousness from one art form to the other. It's not necessarily, the writing to film. But I say, if anything happens, you'll do it, right? The poetry to film.
Okay, Gigi.
Hi. To answer your question, I've never thought about it. I have never thought about my creative writing turning into a screenplay or a movie. But while we were here, when we went to the Global Express Theater, and I saw how beautifully they performed my poem, I was amazed and quite in awe, and it made me think of things like this expanding into various industries, and that's not a bad idea, according to Michaela and the money. Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Yeah, I had a completely different experience with Global Express. Not going to comment on that. But I will say that as a poet, it's a different approach, because you cannot change poetry as text to adapt it to be filmed. And actually the poetry filming or poetry films is a very active field in Ukraine. So I had several of my poems released as these short poetry films. It's very cinematographic. It's like very tiny movies. And listening to your approach here, and I think I would trust my poems to either essay or Michaela here. So I would love to see a different view on my poetry, because if you're a Ukrainian poet collaborating with a Ukrainian director, it's one thing, but it would be really interesting and exciting to see how it works with the international collaboration, in the form of international collaboration. So I'd love that very much.
I had some experience with HBO optioning my novel, and I have to say that I was willing to compromise until I had to say no, and I had to put my foot down, even though there was the money, there was the fame, it was HBO. But I honestly felt that the story is being changed 180 degrees, that I couldn't say yes anymore. On the other hand, I had worked with BBC, and that was released last month, BBC Radio, and I loved it. Everything was adapted from the novel. It was not a whole different story. It was the novel with the changes of the director and the producer, but they stayed true to the essence of the story, and I was very happy with it. I would say compromising was easy. So I feel that it's always a balance between you collaborating and between you saying, this does not work for my piece. And yeah, that was my personal experience.
Hi, thank you for the wonderful reading and talk. Yeah, I think people have had different experiences with adaptations, and I can totally relate with what Gigi is talking about, how much of your story do you compromise? And I was at a point where I had to say, I don't think the story is meant to be adopted because I don't think I can trust any screenwriter and a director enough to kind of let it go. Maybe I'll be like Marquez when I died and someone takes it and do it. But having said that, I wanted to ask you a question. Have you had an unrise moment where you've kind of resisted, and I'm asking both of you, where you've resisted changes by the director, and then afterwards you're like, yeah, maybe he had the right idea, and you had to either apologize or something?
So is your question, have I had to, sort of...
Have you had, this major disagreement with, or had, a major creative difference with a director? Only for you later to realize maybe the interpretation was spot on, or better, or
I actually, because I am a director, film director as well, so I tend to want to control everything myself. But so when my radio play was produced by the BBC, I actually listened to yours. I loved it. So yeah, so there was this one part that I was really unhappy with, which was one of the actors couldn't really improvise, and on the script it says that character has to grumble incomprehensibly, and the actor couldn't really do that. And so there was basically no grumbling in the outcome, and I thought that that was the absolute absence of the trigger that makes the protagonist explode emotionally. And I was really, really unhappy about that. But then, of course, other people, people around me listened to the radio play, the outcome. All of them said that, they couldn't really, notice that, including Roy, who kindly listened to my radio play that I sent him. So yeah, so it was I was stuck with this exact image of how my radio play should be. But in the end, it was the director's decision to just go without the grumbling part. But in the end, I guess it worked out. So yeah, it was, as a writer, it was just I was really I had this exact, exact vision that that was like stuck in my head, and it was really hard for me to like compromise with the result. But then, yeah, apparently, it wasn't really an issue. So, yeah.
其实我觉得都是，其实，在电影里头，它有不断的决定跟选择。
So when you're making a movie, you have over and over, you have to make choices and decisions.
那以我自己的2次改编的经验，我是觉得一个作者大概只有2个选择，一个就是你100%的投入，好比我在做 7 Days in Heaven 是自己当了编剧、当了导演，然后还有后面的宣传等等100%的投入。那另外一种就是今天上映的这部电影，我是0，完全不管，所以我觉得只有100跟0。那如果你选择了0的这一边，就不要说话。
I think as someone who has had 2 of their works adapted, there are 2 ways to go about this as a writer. The first is to be 100% involved, as I was with 7 Days in Heaven. I was a screenwriter. I was involved in the marketing. I wrote the novel. And the other end of that spectrum is to not be involved at all, at 0. And that was my role in the movie that just came out.
因为我觉得当一个文学作品变成电影的时候，它就是导演或者是制片的作品了。
I believe that when a work gets adapted, it becomes the work of the director or a producer.
那好比我们在看 Global Expression 的时候，也会觉得说，自己也许满意，也许不满意，但是它就是另外一个舞台上的作品。
It's just like when we watch the Global Express performances, we might be satisfied, we might be dissatisfied, but those are works that belong to someone else.
A good place to stop. Thank you for this terrific panel.